right, let's start. 45 minutes minus 5, 40 minutes. Welcome to my talk. My name is Cesario. I'm a consultant. I run a company, and what I do on a daily basis is helping companies develop software, mainly banks, with hundreds of people developing one product. So I work in the scaled space a lot. But today I'm going to talk about patterns. There are two books that we wrote. I wrote a book called Emergent. It was presented in 2014. And a new book is coming out in April 10. And that book is about patterns. And that's the content of this talk. It's going to be an interactive session. So there are these kinds of cards. You probably found them on your chairs. So these are cards that you can work with. And the idea is to work with a pair, so 2 people or 3 people. But I think we have enough for working in pairs because there are only a few people here. So we're going to talk about patterns, Scrum patterns. Who of you kind gentlemen and ladies work with Scrum in their daily work? Wow. Couple, 7, a couple of the 10, excellent. So Scrum was not developed for software, right? It was developed in a long, long time ago in the 80s for product development in general, not specifically for software. So it's a good thing. So patterns are what we're going to talk about, and a pattern is something you do. You already do lots of things in your work. A pattern is a thing you do to your team, a thing you do to your organization, a thing you do in your daily life to get work done. And lots of these things that you do work, hopefully. Some of them don't. That's okay. Some of them, the things you do are Scrum. Some of them are not Scrum. For example, a bank I'm working with right now, they develop one product with 23 teams. And these teams do not only build the software, they also run the software. So we saw the DevOps people in the corner there. So these are all DevOps teams. So these people get lots of calls from customers. Wow, this doesn't work. We did it this way, but you need to fix it. I did a wrong entry. So these teams are being disturbed lot of the time by the customers, internal users, external users. So what they did was, well, why don't we assign one team to handle all those calls for the week? So all calls will be sent to that team, and that team, well, has a hard time for a week. And then next week, another team will do that. And then next week, another team will do that. So the teams will rotate, doing this hard work. So that's something they do, it's something that works, but it's still not sufficient for it to be a pattern. Because in order for it to be a pattern, it has to be seen 3 times independently across the world. So if it would have been seen 3 times independently by different people, this solution to a common problem, then it would be candidate to become a pattern. So that's what we are talking about. We are talking about solutions to problems that were identified multiple times all around the world. So this book that we wrote, you can see it here, is the draft Kaft, is written by a community, and this is the community that wrote it. So you can see here lots of folks. We have been getting together for the last 10 years or so to write the book. But you can see people from Japan, like the gentleman on the right. You can see people from Google who work at Google. You can see Jeff Sutherland, which is the creator of Scrum, who's there. You can see me there in the bottom. There's people from Australia. There's also academics, people who are full-time professors at universities. So it's a broad community, and all the things we wrote down as patterns are seen independently by these people, and then we extract the problems. So, oh wow, we saw a problem in Australia and in Japan and in Holland, and we talk about it. Well, what is the core of the problem, the principle of the problem? We extract it and write it down. And in Japan, they solved it this way. In Australia, they solved it this way. In Amsterdam, they solved it that way. So what is the core of the solution? Let's take out the core of the solution and write it so that other people can then understand the principles and then find out how to use that knowledge in their own specific context. Well, that is what patterns are about. So, you probably know, if you do Scrum, you probably know that there's what this pattern is about. But just as an example, well, this is a problem, right? There's a team, and they're working in the sprint, and well, guess what? In the sprint, stuff happens. New things are discovered. Wow, a problem. What are some tensions that are present in this problem, right? That we are discovering new things in the sprint. Well, maybe we should replan and think about how to deal with these things that pop up. But too much replanning, well, that's boring and very ineffective, so what can we do? Another thing, of course, if the sprint backlog has 10 tasks, then, well, there are, I calculated it yesterday, 3,628,800 ways to order 10 tasks. So that's a lot of possibilities, so we have to deal with these problems. Two, so how can we solve these problems? Well, the solution is this, that as you probably recognize. Well, maybe we should have a short meeting every day for 15 minutes and replan the sprint. If we do it every day, then that works. And you probably know which pattern this is. If you're a Scrum guy, you know this pattern to be. Which pattern is this, do you think? It's not grooming, no, it's the daily Scrum, yeah. So it's this simple, right? So we don't say anything about how you should implement it. We give some examples how other people implemented it, but we know that you are the only ones who can implement it in your company because you work there. So you know most about your own company, right? So no consultant can implement that in your own company except yourself. So that's what a Scrum pattern is about. It's something that works, something that's been independently verified by 3 persons. It solves a problem in a specific context and gives you options to implement the solution. So this is a picture from a long time ago. This is 2014 or so. This is in Denmark. And the gentleman here with the cards, who's laying out the cards, is Neil. And what we are doing here is, we said, well, we have a bunch of patterns already written down. So if these are really true, we should be able to make a sequence of patterns, right, that Jeff used. Jeff is the guy with the gray hair there, when he created his first Scrum team at Agile, which was early 90s. And this is what we're doing here. We're creating the sequence of patterns that Jeff used to create his first successful Scrum. And this is what I want to do with you also. So you get a little bit of feeling about what these patterns are. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little quiz. That's the interactive part. And there's some people looking really mad at me. Don't do that. So you have these sets of cards. Yes. And these are 9 cards. And on these cards, I wrote down answers. So the solution to a problem. And the idea is that you pair up with somebody, or with 3 people, and try to answer the question in 60 seconds. So I will give you some questions, and then I'll give you 60 seconds, and then you have to provide an answer, and then I will give you the answer and talk about it. But in order to coordinate this, we are now a little bit more people. I want to introduce a technique that maybe you are familiar with, but in case you're not. And the technique is very simple. It's like this. when I raise my hand, and you see me raising my hand, you stop talking, and you raise your hand too. And if you see somebody else raising his hand, you stop talking too and raise your hand. And if everybody does that, something interesting happens, that the whole crowd will stop talking and raise their hand. And that's good, because then I can start talking again. Are you familiar with this technique? It's a very simple technique. So usually it doesn't work with lots of people, but let's see if Istanbul is special in this case. So this is what we're going to do. If you found your group, divide the cards. If you are alone, well, divide it among yourselves. So I will give you a question, and then I'll give you 60 seconds to fix it. And then after 60 seconds, we'll talk about the solution. So anybody, did I not explain it correctly to anybody yet? Please speak, and I can clarify. So it seems to be clear to everybody. All right, so let me give you the first question. So problem one of the pattern that we have. Stakeholders are happiest with teams who can meet their expectations. Wow. So the team wants to do what is necessary to reduce variance. So the team wants to do what is necessary to be reliable. So please have a look at the patterns and then choose one which you think will solve this problem. We have 58 seconds left. And it's okay to talk. You should be talking and making lots of noise and so on. Forty seconds to go. Thirty seconds to go. 20 seconds. Ten seconds. All right, it doesn't work, but you guys weren't talking, so that's okay. So cool. So you had a first chance to look at the solution statements. So anybody want to shout out what he has as a solution? It's okay if if you don't have the right answer. You guys, which did you have?
It's about yesterday's weather.
Yesterday's weather. Okay. That's a good one. Yesterday's weather could be one that could be used here, but in this case, the solution would be stable teams. But yesterday's weather is very, very close, very, very close. So stable teams. So if you want to be reliable, we know that reliability comes from teams who are well known to each other, who understand each other, who enter into this phase where they can be psychologically safe, where they can be vulnerable within the team. We call it psychological safety. And it takes some time to get there. So if we keep removing and mingling the teams because we have projects or something, then the teams will never get to that state where they can be really, really effective. And this is a graph from our academic friends which show performance on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. And you see here that in the first 1.5 years, I think that doesn't work, but so the biggest gain is in the first 1.5 years. So if you're project organization, and so the team starts getting better and better and better, and you say, wow, project's over, let's mingle the persons again. Team start over again, right? And then again. So, and then we also see, it's less interesting for now, but after some years, let's say 4.7 years or so, performance of the team goes down. So it's time to change yogurt. It's time to change people, because people get into groupthink, they they become lazy, let's say, for this discussion. So stable teams is a pattern that solves the problem of being reliable as a team. So let's do one more. Is that okay? So the second question. It's human nature that individuals set increasingly higher goals for them. So we want to get better and improve and more and so on. And it's also human nature to be more ambitious, right? But if you do that, this can result in shortcuts. So don't doing all the tests, for example, or taking shortcuts, right? Cutting quality, for example. Or this can result in the teams disappointing their stakeholders. We promised all this stuff, but darn, we couldn't do it. So what do you think? It's now easier because you already we have one card left. So which solution would be, which pattern solution would solve this problem? Again, we have 60 seconds. Not yet. So how can we prevent ourselves from overcommitting? How do we solve that? Promising too much. Being too ambitious. 10 seconds. 7 seconds. This is so much fun doing this to you guys. I like it. All right, time's up. We don't have to do the hand stuff, I think. Oh, we do. Excellent. We're improving. So, ladies and gentlemen, who wants to give a try? What would be the solution? Yesterday's weather. Excellent. Yes, yesterday's weather is exactly the pattern that works all over the world for being able to not disappoint your customers. So you take in more or less the amount of work that you were able to finish last sprint. You see, if you were able to finish, I don't know, 15 features last sprint and nothing changed, yeah, you probably can finish 15 features this sprint if they are the same size, right? So that would be yesterday's weather. A problem is our previous gentleman who was talking about value and impact and outcomes. So a problem to think about in this, using this pattern, is that the goal is not to be as productive as you can be, because you can be really, really productive in developing the wrong thing. My customer, again, they had a shipment 6 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago with a lot of solutions to the customers. This is a true story, by the way. But all those solutions were solutions to the wrong problems. So that was pretty embarrassing. When they shipped it to the customers wouldn't take it. Although they solved a lot of solutions, they were the wrong solutions. And another thing, if you want to be predictable, it's better to have your variance in your velocity, let's use that evil word for now, to be low. You want to have low velocity. You don't want to have peaks where people have worked last week until 8 o'clock every morning and every day and so on, and then you have a very high velocity, because that doesn't help you make longer-term predictions. So it's very important to take that into account. So let's try the last one, or maybe two more. What about this one? So you now have less cards left, so it's going to be faster. So the problem is this: if you work with on too many things at once, because, well, we are a Scrum team, but I am the tester, and this guy is the documenter, and this is the architect, and this is the developer, and I only do development, and I only do architecting, bad things happen. Not that much learning will happen. And at the end of the sprint, you will have a lot of work done, but nothing will be done that you can ship to the customer. So if you look at this problem, what would be the solution, you think? What would be the solution for this problem? It's in your hands already. Yes. Two people already have it, so we can. You guys are very smart, so we can shorten it to 30 seconds. You guys have it? Maybe this is a good one. If you have it, you can raise your hand. We'll shorten the feedback loop. "20 seconds. "10 seconds. "5 seconds. Okie dokie. So the answer was already here. It was said by this gentleman in the corner here. The answer is swarming. Obvious, probably, but you can see here that it's better most of the times to pick up a piece of work with a lot of people working together. If you are in the coding business, you already knew pair programming. Now what's becoming popular is mob programming, which is, well, the whole team works together on one thing all the time during the whole sprint, which sounds stupid maybe, sounds ridiculous, because it's not efficient. But nobody cares about efficiency. We care about effectiveness, right? We don't care about how many lines of code you write, or how many tests you write, or how many documentations you write, because that is not what we sell. We sell the integration of all these activities, you see? So a focus on letting people work really hard is a bad idea. So that's why we have this pattern called swarming, right? So there are some other patterns we could do, but you get the idea about this. So problem 4 would be, how can you, if you change priorities a lot, how can you handle those? Well, the answer is this pattern. You have it. It has a strange name because of the academics in our writing group. Iglicitus non interruptus. And this is a pattern that deals with all these interruptions that we give the teams during the sprint, and that's very, very dysfunctional. You can create very ineffective teams. And this is a picture I took a long time ago also, while working at an internet broker. And there's nothing special about this board. There's this burn down that they have. They have this Scrum board in the middle, definition of done, and done items at the right, for you at the right. But on the bottom, you see these strange orange small things. And that is a buffer that they agreed upon. I don't know what it was, a couple of days. And anybody who wants to interrupt the team can now no longer interrupt the team. But what they can do is, they can write their little interruption on a blammy, because it was called the blam team, and just put it there. And then when persons from the team feel comfortable to pick it up, maybe after lunch, or when they come back for a break, or when they start working, so when the task switching waste is minimized, they can just pick it up, fix it, and then take off the time that they spend on it from the buffer. And once the buffer is done, well, it's done. There's no more time to pick up any of these interruptions. That's their implementation of this pattern, illegitimus non interruptus. And it also has a nice picture, if you can see. And so there are more of these patterns. Good housekeeping was one. It's about ensuring that in this case, if you talk about code, that your code can be read by somebody else than the computer, which is very important because software developers spend most of the time reading code. So if your code is a mess, they will spend even more time reading the code. And then when they update it, it will be wrong. So this is about the pattern about cleaning your code every day so that all known issues that you created in the previous day are fixed before you go home. Problem 8 is about how can we improve, right? And one of the things how we can improve is, well, these retrospectives, maybe you've heard of them, and maybe you have heard of them also that they are not very effective after a while. So a very important pattern we discovered is this, we called it happiness metric, and it is, well, if you have lots of options that you can improve, well, please choose the options that the people feel most passion for. Right? If you have 5 things you can improve, wow, hey guys, what do we really love to do? What would we have the most passion for? What do we feel most engagement for? Well, that one will be the next one that you prioritize to work on, to make your next step. So, and then we come to the last pattern, is called teams that finish early, accelerate faster. And this has to do with, so now that we have implemented, for example, yesterday's weather, and we have stable teams, and we don't have those interruptions anymore, and we have clean code, we don't take too much stuff into the sprint because of yesterday's weather, probably you will be finished early in the sprint. There will be space left. So you can then pull new work from the product backlog into your sprint, and you can then, that will then result in improving yesterday's weather. So you're now in this loop, but it starts with these green ones here, that you have to have stable teams because of the reliability, and then you can use yesterday's weather. Because using yesterday's weather without stable teams doesn't make any sense. So now you have the basis for being a little bit reliable. You have to take care of stuff in the sprint. Interruptions. You use the illegitimous non-interruptus pattern. You want to be focused on getting stuff done as a group, so you do swarming also in the sprint. You want to be able to not be slowed down by crappy code, so you do good housekeeping, right? So now that you are getting stuff done, actually, stuff that you actually could done because you have the stable teams, that's yesterday's weather, you can then pick something to improve, right? Using happiness metric or scrumming the scrum. We didn't talk about scrumming the scrum, but happiness metric we did. So that will even increase chances that in the future you will be going even faster. And that will allow you, by the last pattern we discussed, to pull more stuff into your sprint, more experiments, more things you want to validate if it actually solves a customer problem. And that will affect yesterday's weather. So this was the sequence of patterns that Jeff used at his customer when implementing Scrum. And these are just a couple of them, but I hope you get a feeling now what these things are about. So we call this thing a sequence of patterns, because it doesn't make sense to do happiness metric or swarming if you don't have stable teams most of the time. You see? So they have to be, this order, this sequence is a particular order that's very likely to be useful. Any other order will very likely not be that useful. So we wrote down other sequences, like scaling sequences. So how do you scale? Which sequence of patterns can you use to scale your organization? Or how can you build your product organization? Right? How can I build an organization Scrum organization that's adaptable. Well, product organization sequence is about configurations of organizational design. Then how can you build your value stream? This is about how can I get ideas from my customer and then put them into the hands of the customer and see if they actually work, if they actually want to buy it, if it actually solves their problems better than their current solutions. That's what the value stream sequence is about. And we talked about the team sequence just now. So, in order to build your own sequences, there is this thing called a language. And this is the language for the product organization. These are all the patterns that we came up with over the last 9 years. And these are the way they are connected to each other. So what does such a connection mean? A connection means that, so I made a zoom in for you. So it's easier. So let's take a very simple zoom in. Let's say, I don't know, let's say daily Scrum. You see daily Scrum there at the bottom right, and you guys see it here at the bottom right. So that's a pattern, and it is a pattern that makes sprint planning better. There's this arrow you see from sprint planning to daily Scrum. We say that daily Scrum refines sprint planning. So it makes sprint planning a little bit better. So you first want to work on sprint planning before you work on daily Scrum. Because it doesn't make any sense to do daily Scrum without a sprint planning. Because there's nothing to replan, you see. But sprint planning doesn't make that much sense most of the time if you don't have a Scrum team. So you first want to think about and work on the Scrum team, the bigger thing, and then zoom in. So refining means you start with the big things, and then you make the parts in the big thing better and better and better. But the focus is always on the big thing. And maybe you recognize that from systems thinking. You identify what the system is, then you try to optimize the whole of the system. How do you do that? You optimize the parts only if these optimizations of the parts improve the whole. If you're not a systems thinker, you will say, well, let's improve daily Scrum. So you're going to improve the parts taken separately. And if you improve the parts taken separately, we know that the performance of the whole will very likely go down. You cannot improve the parts of a system taken separately. So that's why we generated this graph. And you see Scrum team, that's a refinement of Conway's law, which is a foundational pattern. It says you should design your organization in such a way that it attends best to the concerns of the business. If you're a product development organization, Conway's law would say, well, you must first identify what your product is, and then see what are the needs that this product satisfies for those users, and then study how our current organization satisfies those needs. So which people are needed, which systems, which groups, which teams. And once you study that, how the needs are satisfied, how they flow through your organization, well, these groups of people and systems, well, they should be used to identify Scrum teams. Because then you're focused on shipping value to your end user. That's what Conway's law is about. So you can have all the Scrum teams you want. If they are focusing on the wrong thing, doesn't really help, you see. So that's what Conway's law is about. And then we have also the value stream pattern language, which is about it's not about the organizational design, but it's about the other things like the product backlog and the sprint goals and the dynamic part. So, and why do we have these? Because if you want to improve your current Scrum implementation, or if you want to start a Scrum implementation, well, where should you start? So you can use this to find problems that you have and then figure out, hey, what other problems do I need to solve first before I can fix my current problem? So you will move up the graph. And then you can identify, okay, we have to work on these patterns. And once you made up your mind, let's say, I think we should do this, well, that would be then your sequence. Just like the sequence we talked about just a moment ago, the team sequence. Then you have a plan to start working or improving your current Scrum. So all these patterns are already available, so you can just find them on our website, scrumbook.org. But if you want all supporting text and so on, and how to use this and so on, that's in the book, and the book is beta release April 10. So we are 4 minutes shy of end date of the time box. Any questions, remarks you guys want to make about this? This gentleman has a question or a remark.
You know, in the software development.
Yes. You're waiting for the mic?
In the software development, there was a book in 1996. It's called Design Patterns.
Yes, I
but
know.
actually, they are not patterns.
Yes, they are not.
In terms of what you are talking, because
These are not patterns.
the book, yes.
It's 1994, I think, from the Gang
probably,
of
yes.
Gang of Four.
Fours.
Yeah.
But they are not real patterns according to James Coplin.
Yeah, he's one of the authors here.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Can you give me?
Yeah, they are not. Okay. So his argument is I don't know exactly, but and it's very hard to say sensitive things here while being recorded. But let's say they are not patterns because they were not built in community.
Exactly. They don't have any pattern language.
I don't know if that's true.
So far, from the beginning of your presentation, you have a pattern language.
We have
Right.
2 of them, yeah.
Yes, you have a lot of terminology, but design patterns doesn't include any pattern language. This is the difference.
Yes, I don't
So
know.
they are not actually design patterns. Everybody calls it design patterns, but they are not design some contracts or something or design solutions, but they are not real in the real meaning of the patterns.
Okay. Yeah,
because the patterns language is missing.
Okay.
According to James Coplin.
Yes.
All right.
I don't remember that.
All right. Thanks.
It's a long time ago, the book. Okay. Thank you. Any more remarks or questions? Cool. Means we're 1 minute before end, just like any Scrum project. All Scrum projects end on time. You see. Also this presentation. All right. Thank you for your attention.